Greetings, one and all, and welcome to the Infinite Journey podcast. In today's show, we are going to be discussing the Urantia Cults. This was not a show that I planned, it's rather spontaneous, and I wanted to have this conversation today because after I put out the last show, The Mysterious Urantia Book, I got a handful of emails where there were individuals who explained to me that they've been reading the Urantia book for a while, going through the material, but then they saw on the internet that there were these groups that formed kind of a cult around the Urantia book. And as cults usually do, they have some very odd and spurious practices. And it made people, some people feel weird about reading the Urantia book. They're feeling kind of hesitant now because they see these cults and they say, well, is this what the Urantia book promotes? Is this what it encourages us to do, to have these strange beliefs and strange practices? And I think I wanted to do this show because I understand that feeling all too well. I personally do not like cults or weird religious groups that put a bizarre or creepy spin on religion or religious or spiritual texts. When I was an evangelical fundamentalist Christian and also quite involved in the Word of Faith or prosperity gospel movement, there were things there that I always felt were not right. And I was never a person that was gung ho. I always kind of looked before I leapt. I wasn't the kind of person that if a televangelist told me to do something, or the pastor of a church, or everybody in the church, or everybody in the denomination was doing it, I wasn't the kind of person that just went with the crowd. I was always hesitant, and if I felt that it wasn't right or right for me, I did not follow along. And I caught some guff from some people about that kind of thing. People that would ask, in those days, are you sure that you're really born again? Are you sure that you really have the indwelling of the Holy Spirit? Because, you're hesitant to embrace this doctrine or to, do this thing that we're all getting into now. And, after I left that particular sect and movement, I felt really bizarre about anything that had to do with Jesus, Christianity, the Bible. I had to put all that on the shelf for a while. I couldn't look at it, I couldn't think about it. It literally made me feel sick. It made me feel anxious. It made me feel just weirded out. And I had to find my way back to those things, or rather, they found their way back to me, if that makes sense to you at all. It was almost like God and Jesus were saying, okay, now that you've divested yourself of all of this doctrine and religion, we can get back to the simplistic faith that you once knew and followed and have real communion together. And that took a while to build. It certainly took a while because being in that movement, it was very damaging. I look at evangelical Christianity, fundamentalist Christianity, the whole word of faith, prosperity gospel movement. I look at those as being very cultic because I was on the inside and I saw how things go there. So I have a real aversion to mind stealing, mind numbing cults and religious groups. So I definitely get where people are coming from with the Urantia book. And yes, I am familiar with some of these cults. When I dig into something, I dig in pretty deeply. I want to find out all the ins and outs, the positives and the negatives. And I am certainly aware that these groups are out there. I know that there's one gentleman in particular who I came across on YouTube. YouTube always brings us such fascinating material and characters. But not naming names, some of you may know who I'm talking about. This individual believes that um, he teaches this kind of new age concept of walk-ins, and a walk-in in the new age movement is said to be, let's say, my soul is not happy in this world. I want to leave. Maybe I'm contemplating suicide. Maybe I'm completely miserable living on planet Earth. So the spirit world will send to me a higher spirit. Let's say his name is Jim. Then my soul will leave my body and go to another dimension of life, and Jim will overtake my body. So it will still look like me, it will still sound like me, but the soul inhabiting this body is not me anymore. It's the higher spirit of Jim. So that's what a walk in is, someone who takes your soul's place in your body, lives out your life for you, and allegedly brings enlightenment to mankind and those around it. So this individual teaches something like walk ins and says that at one time in his life, I'm not sure if it was the Archangel Gabriel or one of the associates of Gabriel from the Urantia book that took this person's body over. He is no longer who he used to be. He is Gabriel. And he certainly has a cult. He has a group around him. He has written, that I know of, several books that he authored saying that the celestial beings that authored the Urantia book gave him new information that is the next revelation after the Urantia book. He teaches reincarnation. There's, from what I understand, there's drugs, there's the taking of people's money, there's the sexual, promiscuity within the cult. All the very strange and mind controlling behaviors that cults usually have. And I know there's another individual who did the same kind of thing. He's written several books saying that the same angelic beings that gave us the Urantia book are now giving him new information. And he has a group of people around him that follow his teachings. But is this valid from the standpoint of the Urantia book? Are these cults valid? Is it what the Urantia book promotes? Is it what the Urantia book tells us to do? And the short answer to that question is absolutely not. If you were to read the book that I suggested in the last podcast, A History of the Urantia Papers by Larry Mullins, you find out that it was very important to the beings that allegedly gave us the Urantia book that A, the original manuscripts that these beings manifested always disappeared. Once the papers were typed out by the Forum Group and Dr. William Sadler, The original manuscripts vanished, never to be seen again. It is said that those who compiled the Urantia book, that once the plates and the die were all set for the printings of the Urantia book, that even those typewritten manuscripts must be destroyed once the book is published. And some people would say, well, why is that? Why do all the other manuscripts have to be destroyed? And the idea of it was that the beings who gave us the Urantia book did not want any older manuscripts hanging around where mankind or supposed theologians would take those manuscripts, read them, and start doing the same thing they do with the Bible, with other spiritual and holy texts in this world, and start saying, oh, this is not what it means. This is what it's supposed to mean. And then it gets printed and reprinted and changed. And soon we have the John Smith version and translation of the Urantia book, and the Joe Johnson translation of the Urantia book. Here's the message they were really giving us. Here's what they really said. So this is why the celestial beings who gave the Urantia book said everything. Once the book is printed, the revelation stands on its own. All other manuscripts must, be destroyed, because they didn't want human interference and further manipulations of the text, which mankind always seems to do. So that's point number one. Point number two, as we talked about in the last podcast, the Urantia book was to be a revelation to mankind, but most importantly, to the individual. It was never supposed to be a book that started a movement. It was never supposed to be a book that started an organization or a church or a group. Because remember what we talked about in the last podcast, the Urantia book states emphatically that the most important thing in any of our lives is our personal relationship and experience of God. And that is something that theology, doctrines, other human beings, and organizations cannot give us, even though they try by saying, this is what you must believe, this is how you must interact, this is how God is, this is how we hypothesize a relationship between God and man should be, that those hypotheses are flawed because they're built upon man's theology, which is his interpretation and philosophy of the ancient texts. And so this was not the purpose, and they didn't want this to be the purpose of the Urantia book. When I bought my copy of the Urantia book, that is my book. Now I can study with other people, but what I glean, what I learn, what I understand, the little moments of enlightenment or greater understanding that I glean from its pages, they're mine and mine alone. Those were things that the text brought to my understanding. And no man has the authority or the wisdom or the right to say that is wrong. This is how you must believe it. This is how I understand it. So you have to do it this way. You have to believe that way. No, this is personal. This is between me and God. It is between you and God. We're also told not to judge one another, because we're all on a different rung of the ladder. We all have our understanding and our experiences of, with God. So don't judge other people, and certainly don't tell other people what to do or what to believe unless you see them naturally, because the Urantia book talks very much about common sense. And, if you see somebody doing something harmful to themselves or others or taking advantage of others, certainly, as spiritual people, as God's children, as people that believe in love and peace, we should certainly try to uh, intervene and help. But the Urantia book was something that was supposed to be personal to each individual. It was not meant to be another Bible or another Quran. It was not a book to be put on a pedestal and worshiped like other holy texts had become over time. And this is why the older manuscripts were destroyed, because the beings who gave the manuscript knew that if mankind had in their possession an unexplained manuscript that allegedly came from angelic beings that somehow materialized these documents into our world, they knew that human beings would prop up that manuscript. They would begin to almost worship it. It would become an idol to them. And it would become the document again that they would always look at and reinterpret, just like these cults. Well, I was reading the original document of the Urantia papers that came straight from the angels. And while I was reading it, the angels spoke to me and they gave me this deeper insight of their manuscript, and the words began to glow on the page, and I saw this vision, and here we go. New doctrines, new things added to the Urantia book. And that's what they didn't want. And that's what the individuals who compiled the Urantia book did not want to happen. And that's what the Urantia Foundation is all about. It was founded by Dr. Sadler and some of the individuals from the forum that he put together. And the Urantia Foundation is not a religion, it is not a cult. It is kind of like the board of trustees for the Urantia book. They try to distribute the book to anyone who wants it. They will give a copy freely. They have forums on there. You could meet other people that read the Urantia book in your area. I haven't really looked into it all that deeply, but they also are kind of the guardians of the revelation. And if they see a lot of these people that start cults or write extra books that say, oh, those angels, those celestial beings that gave us the Urantia book, oh, they're speaking to me. And I just wrote this brand new volume showing what happens after the Urantia book, or in addition to the Urantia Foundation will say, nope, ignore that. I mean, you can read it if you want to, because they don't tell anybody what to do. It's your spirituality, it is your spiritual path. But they caution people to say, we don't endorse this. We have no reason to believe that the celestial beings who gave us the Urantia book are now giving these other individuals revelation to add to the Urantia book. These other revelations contradict the Urantia book, so we caution that you not take these things on board as additional revelations. So that's basically their role. And so you're not going to find any serious student of the Urantia book or anyone in the Urantia Foundation or the Urantia Book network is one of them. There's various groups out there that stick to the integrity of what the original revelation was supposed to be and what its purpose was. And none of them ever endorse any of these cults or their beliefs or their behaviors. I mean, people that read the Urantia book are pretty patient and try not to be judgmental of others. But some of this stuff I've read online or saw videos from individuals who just had to say, you know, please stay away from this kind of thing. This is not what the Urantia book is all about. This is not what it endorses. This has nothing to do with their revelation. This is someone probably looking to capitalize on the Urantia book and make some kind of money or get a following of their own, but we don't endorse this. We don't acknowledge this as being so. So the cults are really their own thing. And so I would say, if you see these people, if you run across their videos or anything on the internet, don't let it weird you out where you think, oh, geez, is this what the Urantia book is all about? Look at this, creepy guy in this creepy group. Uh, don't let it take you down that path and steal your joy or spoil your journey with the Urantia book, because what these people are teaching doesn't even line up with what the Urantia book tells us. For instance, the individual that I spoke about earlier who said he was taken over by the angel Gabriel or one of his associates, and he now has this cult group, you know, eh, of his own. He teaches the New Age concept of walk-ins. He was taken over. His spirit left. He's not the man he was. He may look like the man he was, but that soul is gone. And now Gabriel or one of the associates of Gabriel now inhabit his body. The Urantia book does not teach that kind of thing whatsoever. It does not teach walk-in spirits. You will not find that kind of thing anywhere in the Urantia book. This individual also teaches reincarnation, and there are some other Urantia cults that teach reincarnation as well. The Urantia book does not teach reincarnation. The Urantia book says that reincarnation does not uh, does not exist. It's not real. When the human body perishes, one of two things happen: the personality dies, ceases to be. If that personality did not seek God and bond and bind with that fragment of divinity that God placed within their consciousness when they were born, or that personality survives death, the forming of the soul, beginning to bond with the divine spark within, is taken to the next level of the spirit world where it continues its journey toward God. Spirits do not come back to the earth. They do not come back and are reborn in new bodies and live a new life. So, anybody that's teaching anything like this, claiming that they are a Urantia group, um, they're only a Urantia group in name because they're not actually teaching or believing or propagating what the book actually says. So again, don't let them weird you out And another telltale sign will always be that they endorse or have written themselves new books, new revelations from the angels and the celestial beings that tell us what is to happen. It's new revelation after the Urantia book. That is a big telltale sign that no, these are people trying to gain a following and a name for themselves. And remember what we said earlier, this was not something that the Urantia book was supposed to do. It is not something that the beings who gave us the book wanted the book to perpetuate in our world. They didn't want it to be like the other holy books, all these groups and subgroups and sects and, everybody teaching something different. They didn't want it to start an organization or a religion. It was simply a revelation for our own study and enlightenment and spiritual growth and understanding. That's it. No, no man-made messiahs, no manuscripts being worshipped, no theology where we have all these different translations of the Urantia books. You know, that's you see anything like that, as I said, it's only a Urantia group in name only. And one of the big tip-offs, if you read the Urantia book at all, it really talks about having faith, being a sincere person, loving your fellow man, being good to one another. It really drives this idea of the brotherhood of man home over and over again. We are all a brotherhood and a sisterhood of man and women, and we should treat one another as such. The Urantia book also goes to great lengths in many of its papers to dispel a lot of religious superstitions that we have. Such things as, ghost cults, worshiping the dead, worshiping our ancestors, blood sacrifice, all of these different things that were the beginnings of religion of primitive man. But as we have grown and as we have matured and as we've had great teachers and masters come to us like Jesus, that we should be beyond all of that. So if you're seeing somebody that's not living up to the brother and sisterhood of men and women, taking their money to live in a commune, abusing their members, doing the cult thing where they have sexual intercourse with uh, everyone's wife that belongs to the cult because they're the leader, doing drugs, doing kind of weird rituals and spirit walk-ins. When you see that kind of thing, that is not, I could tell you right up front, that is not from the Urantia book at all. It's in fact behavior, all of it, that the Urantia book discourages over and over again. So again, please don't let these people, shake your foundation and rattle your cage. I know how that is. I get it. I'm sensitive to that kind of thing myself. And, it can make me back up in a heartbeat when I see any of these weird cultic mentality people and their teachings and their groups around something. It just probably because I was in a movement that I felt was very cultic at its roots. I'm very sensitive to that kind of thing, so I know how it can be a big, big turnoff. But take it from me, this is not what the Urantia book is all about, and these groups are doing their own thing for their own purposes, and many of them are not even adhering to the teachings that are in the Urantia book. So ignore them. They're not endorsed. They're not encouraged. Uh, the Urantia Foundation or anybody who is serious or knows anything about the book says, nah, this stuff is, it's a lot of hooey. Just stay away from it. Don't let them put a little rain cloud over your head. Just leave it alone. They don't have anything to do with the Urantia book or the revelation that is contained therein. So I hope this discussion was helpful to you today. As I said, this was kind of spontaneous, but I enjoyed this conversation. To me, this is what podcasting is all about. You put out a show, people respond, people ask questions, and that causes me and inspires me to do a show like this that is meaningful to people that listen, people that have questions, people that have concerns. As I've always said, this is kind of my way of giving back, trying to put some kind of positive support and energy, out into the world. And also part of, what I do for God. We're all here for a reason. We're all here to make a difference. So that's a big part of what I do this. So I appreciate those of you that commented, those of you that emailed, because shows like this are meaningful. And it does mean a lot to me to be able to have conversations like this and talk to people that are listening and that have similar concerns and hang-ups over cults, just like I do. So thank you, everybody that commented or emailed. I do appreciate it. So I hope you got something out of this conversation today. As always, I appreciate you listening. Until next time, stay safe, stay well, stay away from the cults and the kooks. There's many of them out there, but take the good advice of the spirit of the Urantia book and let your relationship with God be personal. Don't let anybody dictate what you believe. Don't let anybody freak you out or make you feel stressed out or weird because they might have some kind of crazy ideas about God or Jesus or the Bible or the Urantia book. If that's their journey, that's their journey. If you can't help them and bring enlightenment to their lives, then you just have to release it and let it go. But don't let it affect your journey. Let your relationship be your relationship. You experience God the way you experience God and live a life of faith and peace and love toward others. Thank you again for listening. I'm Paul James Caden. I'll see you next time here on the Infinite Journey.